It's saying we're never gonna leave the kids alone is a fucking creepy thing to say to people. You are doing exactly what you are being upset with him doing. What they want, I don't want to say doesn't matter, but at the same time, they don't have the ability to truly interact with the information they're given. They're children. I do not care how you choose to go about your life, so long as it does not impede or harm others. Kids are impressionable. That's what's going on, everybody. It's Kmplxity with a lasting opinion. Today we're taking a look at a VTuber by the name of Nayar. I believe I'm saying that correctly. They are a trans VTuber who's caught themselves in a little bit of drama with Asmondgold's community. It seems as though Asmondgold went ahead and reacted to a clip or a video of theirs and pretty much just labeled this person, her, as a PDF. We are going to come into this with an open mind, and with that being said, let's get right into the video, everybody.
Conversion therapy is still a thing in America and government funded in some places. It's like a religious thing, and then apparently it's okay to children. But
so conversion therapy still does go on in this day and age, even with the amount of things that have occurred because of it. Such as like people getting arrested, kids being killed, stuff of that nature, and we wholeheartedly are against it. Conversion therapy has never, in my personal opinion, helped anybody. People are more so forced into believing that they're not gay or they're not lesbian or they're not anything of that nature. So, yeah.
Oh, I am so evil for saying that, hey, you know, if a child cannot consent to HRT, then they can't consent to puberty. As a god talk.
Wait, what?
Consent to HRT, then they can't. That, hey, you know, if a child cannot consent to HRT, then they can't consent to puberty. As a god.
Okay, but no one's forcing puberty onto them. Hold on. All right, we're already out of the gate with a terrible, in my personal opinion, a terrible take. Hopefully they flush out their idea here more, but you can't consent to HRT as a child by yourself. You can't just go into a medical profession and ask for HRT, and nobody's consenting to puberty because it is a natural occurrence of the human body, whether it's male or female, the same as it is with any animal. It's just a natural occurrence. You can't also consent to being born. You can't consent to being born with leukemia. You can't consent to being born with one leg. You can't consent to getting into a car accident and dying. Like there's these types of things. I guess technically you can somewhat consent into that because you're consenting to get into a car. But at the end of the day, no one's forcing a child to go through puberty. Nobody is. If you left a child in a room by themselves, they would go through puberty naturally. They wouldn't go through HRT, beta blockers, and stuff of that nature naturally. There is no level of consent there. So that's a terrible argument in my personal opinion. There's no. It's one has to be given to a child, the HRT. The other is just something that naturally occurs.
Talked about me. So he is looking at a tweet. Transphobes love using kids can't consent as an excuse to ban healthcare for trans youth. However, it's interesting that they have no issues with forcing gender reassignment surgeries onto intersex infants. Full video is
Okay, well, kids can't consent. I don't believe that should be used as an excuse to ban healthcare. Okay, we shouldn't ban any healthcare. But it should be taken into there's more nuance to it. It should be taken into account why this person is wanting this, the age of the person, the lifestyle in which they lead. I mean, you have to also think about, like, kids are impressionable. That's like literally 90% of a child's life is being impressed upon by other people, learning different things, how to speak, their accents, where they go, all of these different natures. So it's not something that can just, it's one of those things where kids can very easily be taught to want for something. Spoiled kids, they grow up believing that, you know, money is abundant because they've never had to struggle for it. Poor kids will grow up believing that about rich kids, you know, and vice versa, or different things, different nuances in these situations. Children they're impressionable. That's the whole reason they can't consent to sex. They aren't able to drink. They aren't able to smoke. They can't drive. There's reasons for these types of things, because when you're young, you're so incredibly impressionable. At 15, I was easier to be coerced into doing something than I am currently at 28. Like, there's a time and place for certain aspects of this type of stuff, of trans healthcare, yes, but you have to be mindful that you can't be in this conversation without also accepting and acknowledging the fact that there are parents who push their kids to do these things because they want to be the cool, inclusive, look at us, we're totally to the left types of parents. I'm not saying that's the majority of parents who have trans kids or claim their kids are trans, but you have to at least be open to that idea, especially as a trans creator. You would want to weed out those types of situations in an effort to bolster your own arguments in this area. Like, at least that's just my opinion. But they are saying, however, it's interesting that they have no issue with forcing gender reassignment surgery onto intersex infants. That I'm not entirely sure about. It sounds like they're maybe talking about kids who, when they're born, they are like their sex can go one way or the other, kind of like a hermaphrodite, only a hermaphrodite has both genders. And honestly, that one I mean, is it forcing? They're choosing which one, because sometimes there could be medical issues that occur, right? So if somebody, let's say, doesn't have distended testicles, right? The fact that they're up inside the child's body, the infant's body, it could be a possibility that could lead to some sort of cancer or issue in the future. So all of these things is being talked about in a broad spectrum rather than as nuanced as it could be. But that's as much as I'm going to say on that, because I don't know enough about intersex, what this person's talking about in their second sentence, to be able to interact with it in a way that I feel comfortable enough to put a statement out.
To Alex coverage of the situation with Ref, how transphobes are weaponizing age of consent against healthcare. It's a 17-minute video. This clip is 43 seconds.
Here we go.
I mean, I understand what you're going for, saying that, hey, this is probably taken out of it. But at the same time, if you have a bad take in a video and that bad take is within those 40-something seconds, not saying it is, but you do have the ability to turn around and utilize one small segment to destroy someone's entire argument. I mean, look at the Tectone drama. And this person should know, considering Tectone was the one who actually responded to Nayara on Twitter saying, "Don't make me call my dad," after the whole rape and sexual assaults and everything like that got ousted. So you can take his little, his 2-3 hour long stream where he was crying about people bringing up his dad, but only days later, he's obviously making open-ended jokes/threats to people about his dad possibly wanting to rape them. Like, that tweet alone just kind of destroys his entire, boo-hoo, poor me saga, in my personal opinion.
And it's always like so interesting that these people are like obsessed with age of consent, with like
That's enough. We've had enough. Let's move on.
7 seconds out of a 43-second clip from a 17-minute video from a 4 to 5 hour stream. What did I say after that? And it's
well, hold on. This isn't like, this is a clip here, but it's not a clip of like Asmond, right? You can't be upset with him being clipped and then posted on Twitter. He didn't do it himself.
from a 4 to 5 hour stream. What did I say after that? And it's always like so interesting that these people are like obsessed with age of consent, with like consent in general, but then they have like takes of how intersex people need to be forced into gender reassignment surgeries, etc., because they are broken and need to be fixed. Then consent doesn't matter. It's just when it comes to like a child getting treated for gender dysphoria, not feeling comfortable in their own skin, and wanting to get help. Then consent is like a big issue. Oh, kids can't consent. That's why, you know, HRT and puberty blockers, etc. is like a bad thing. But when it comes to like intersex children, gender reassignment surgery, then it's like, oh, the doctors, they know better. So I guess we had Asmondgold go on his stream, look at a Reddit thread with videos or like with tweets that I made. Sadly, the Leave Kids Alone video has been scrubbed. It hasn't. I just changed the thumbnail. So he clicked.
Yeah, that's
video has been scrubbed. It has.
Yeah, that's a pretty bad thumbnail right there. Leave kids alone. No, let trans kids be. See, ooh, yeah. Yeah, at least you did say that the thumbnail was awful right here, right? It says, I wanted to make it controversial back then, but it has obviously backfired. See, but here's the thing. You went with a controversial thumbnail and immediately got flack for it, it seems. So therefore, you knew what you were doing. You were trying to get those clicks. You were trying to get those rage bait clicks. And unfortunately, you got rage bait. Like the people were upset. Like that's what happens. If you're ever gonna put a clicky, catchy, rage baity title, you have to be ready for people to just completely not even interact with what's being put out there and simply going off of their own acquired beliefs at that moment in time, especially on such an issue such as this. I'm sorry, it's just the way it works. You got flack, you realized it was a bad idea, but you know what? It is what it is. You kind of got to take your lumps when it comes to something like that.
Change the thumbnail. So he clicked on a link in front of 60,000 people. He watched 7 seconds of a clip. I love that, like, he could have just let it play, but he stopped after I talked about age of consent in a video about how children can consent to medical treatment. I love that I'm like being portrayed as a groomer now. I love that they are screaming at me for going after Kirsche. We're using clips that are out of context, but I guess context doesn't matter when you need to twist the facts to go after people.
Well, hold on. You can't say context doesn't matter because he's reacting to a short clip of you and you're reacting to a short clip of him. You can't on one hand turn around and be like, well, this was pulled out of a 2-hour plus live stream, but yet you're only interacting with a clipped format as well. You are doing exactly what you are being upset with him doing. You're reacting to a clip. You're not getting the full context. Now, obviously, I haven't watched the rest of this video, but if this is like a main point of contention for you, that he's reacting to you out of context, you're doing the exact same thing by not reacting to the entire segment of his live stream. Like it's the it's the pot calling the kettle black here. I'm sorry, but you can't on one hand be like, oh, boo-hoo, woe is me. You're reacting to me out of context, but at the same time, you're only reacting to this one clip here. Maybe maybe this person reacts to the actual segment on the live stream. I don't know.
You need to like portray them in a different light because you can't handle the facts. Victon made the same claim about you earlier in the stream. Is there a clip of that? Murder flashed across his mind at that instant. If you read what her post is about, you can clearly tell what she was about to say before he cut her off to make her look bad. Was really disingenuous. He's already pretty much confirmed to have a thing for kids. From his previous word vomit on his app, will never leave kids alone. Are you crazy? You realize you can actually look at her post yourself. She didn't say will never leave kids alone in a gross way. She said it in terms of supporting those who need it and not leaving them alone in a world that hates them.
Okay, this person is German, so obviously English is their second language. You can tell by the thick accent. But you also have to understand that there is nuance, and that's a huge word on YouTube, okay? Because not a lot of people understand it. There is a huge nuance to what you say. You, in my personal opinion, it's saying we're never going to leave the kids alone is a fucking creepy thing to say to people when the whole movement of leave the kids alone literally was made to like stop touching the kids, leave the kids alone. And also in earnest, or not in earnest, but also, yes, when it comes to like trans kids and making kids trans, or not making them trans, but supporting transition and stuff of that nature. The problem is that when you say, no, we're not going to leave the kids alone, it's just one of those things where if you read it in text, it is up to interpretation. What you could have said is that we're never going to leave trans kids behind, or we will never stop supporting kids who wish to transition, or something of that nature. Saying we're never going to leave the kids alone is just fucking creepy, no matter how you slice it, no matter what way you do it. Not going to knock on this person. English is obviously their second language, but you have to understand that what you say, what you say matters a lot, and can very easily shoot yourself in the foot if you say something that just doesn't come across the right way. It not necessarily doesn't come across the right way, but it doesn't convey exactly what you're wanting to say. It sounds like you're saying we're never going to leave them behind. Like we're never going to stop fighting for their rights, which all of those things would be way better, way more palatable, way easier to interact with, and not cause such a crazy polarizing feeling when it comes to, wanting to stick up for kids. Because who doesn't want to stick up for kids? Everybody wants to defend kids. They're the most one of the most vulnerable of our society. Kids, animals, and the elderly.
The point is that children can't consent in general. Regardless of how it was cut off, it doesn't change the fact of how predatory and appalling Nayar's behavior is.
Nayara's?
It doesn't change the fact of how predatory and appalling Nayara's behavior.
Naira. Okay, Naira. I'll say Naira. Okay. Listen, you guys may not want to get the she, her, their, anything of that nature correct. I personally, I've always said this, we've always said this on this channel, so long as what you do doesn't hurt or impede upon anybody else's life, we're 100% for it. If this person turns out to be some sort of, weirdo who wants to be around kids way too much, all of that goes out the window. Will not respect pronouns, will not respect anything of that nature, because you're for a different cause. Let's just say that, okay?
Yes. Nayar has already seen with disgust. Much of Nayar's content and comments are about explicitly targeting children. No, they aren't at all. No one time has she ever tried to convince a kid to be trans or anything like that. The only thing she said is that the kids who are trans should be supported. Also, kids literally consent to medication all the freaking time. This is no different.
Actually, kids themselves do not consent to the medical treatment. The parents do. They are the point of attorney of the child until that child becomes of age. Kids are born, right? And they get their immunizations, vaccinations, all of that stuff. They don't consent to any of it. The parents do. It is the parents' choice. They are the ones who have the ability to say it, yes or no. Until they're able to completely articulate what they're wanting, then that's what they go with, It's the same thing of like if children who are born with heart defects, right? They have to go through a multitude of different surgeries throughout the years until they're able to properly articulate what it is that they want or are able to do. What they want, I don't want to say doesn't matter, but at the same time, they don't have the ability to truly interact with the information they're given. They're children. They don't understand the fact that they don't understand exactly what it means to like die on the table. They just barely were given life. They're not going to understand what it means to have it be taken away, or the risk in doing certain surgeries or taking vitamins or anything of that nature. And it also goes back to the fact that kids are impressionable. They oftentimes want to make their parents proud and stuff. So they take medicine. They're told, hey, this is good for you. So they take it, or you need it. So they take it. They are impressionable. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Obviously, we want to take care of our kids, but they don't. You're saying they consent to medication all the time. Do they really though? Because if you were to take a 8-year-old, right? And let's say this 8-year-old has a broken arm. Take the parents out of the room. The kid is there, and you say, "Hey, listen, we have to do surgery on your arm to take your bones, put them back together, put you in a cast. You're probably going to be in a cast for a couple of months, but there's a possibility you might lose your arm during this surgery because of how the bone is fragmented into the skin, and it's going to take a multitude of different surgeries in an effort to go ahead and fix your arm completely." Do you honestly believe that 8-year-old is going to have the ability to understand all the medical ramifications of that surgery? No, which is why you have parents who are there with them. It's the same reason why in most states, children aren't allowed to be questioned by the police without parents present because of the possibility of an adult taking advantage of a child's innocence, of a child's inability to understand exactly the weight of the ramifications of talking to a police during an investigation. Hell, most adults don't even understand. It's just one of those things where, are you correct that they consent to medication all the time? Sure. But you're also leaving out the fact that a lot of the time, most of the time, kids aren't making consensual decisions on medication until they're at least in their mid to late teens, when they have to start doing this stuff and learning how to do this stuff on their own. And even when they become adults, oftentimes they still rely on people who've gone through things. You know, it's just... I don't know. It's up to other people. Like, these are my opinions on it. It's a weak argument because it's not fully fledged. You're not taking all of the consideration here, or at least all things that should be considered, in my opinion.
Didn't do it to make them look bad. He just didn't want to hear anymore. Yeah, same thing. When these people talk about consent, it's always in a gross way. When I, for example, talk about consent, it is to like address the claims of like trans kids don't exist because they are too young to transition and like all these things. They shouldn't have HRT. It's the same with me saying, hey, you know, if a trans kid cannot consent to HRT, then why can they consent to puberty? How does that work? And then it's like, oh, that is so different. That's like lunacy that you even like insinuate that such a thing even like exists. That is crazy. You normies actually fall for this. Kids can't consent.
But it is... Wait, where's the fallacy in that, though? Attack the argument being made, because all you're doing is saying, oh, like, a woe is me here. You're not explaining why what your stance is on them not being able to consent to puberty. Puberty is something that occurs regardless of what you are, regardless if you are trans, regardless if you're cis, regardless of anything. It doesn't matter if you're autistic, if you have cancer. It doesn't matter if you have some sort of growth defect. It doesn't matter if your stunt is if your growth is stunted. None of that stuff matters. It is a biological inevitability that all people are going to go through some form of puberty. And it doesn't, like, it's not something forced upon children. I mean, I guess technically you can say it is because it's the biological ramifications of growing older. But if you were to leave a child, let's not even say a child, an adult in a room with HRT, the HRT isn't just going to magically, go into the person's bloodstream. It has to be administered. It has to be given. There has to be a script written for it. There has to be medical documentation of it. There has to be all of these different steps that go into it. Puberty just happens. Like, I get the person is stating that they shouldn't have to be forced to go through puberty if they are a different gender. I understand what they're saying, but at the same time, kids do not even have the ability to articulate what type of fucking milk they want most of the time, or how they're in pain or anything. You ever see a kid fall down, right? and they hurt their knee, but they just start crying and grabbing their head or something. Like, kids they just don't understand these types of things. These are situations in which there's nuance to it. And I hate to be that guy, but if you're in need of a medical transition, proof is needed. You can't, in my personal opinion, you shouldn't be able to just, with any child, and again, child, we're talking 15 and under at this point. I do believe that at least around 16, 17, kids have the ability to start articulating the things going on in their body. But as a child, 15 to 16 or 15 and under, it's a lot harder for them to even be able to understand certain things, like even a fucking divorce. And a divorce is less complicated than medical transition. And most kids don't even understand what's going on through a divorce, or the lack of a parent in their life. I mean, when I was growing up and I didn't have my father in my life, I grew up angry. I grew up mad. I grew up with all these different feelings and never even knew exactly why it was, until later in life when I realized that it was all of the pent up anger and aggression and hatred that I had for my father. Like, I had to learn that in my mid-20s. It's just one of those things that there's just so much nuance to it. I don't believe there's any right answer, but I definitely can't stand by somebody saying that, well, if they can't consent to HRT, then they also can't consent to puberty. It's like, well, okay, so then what's the fix to that? Because if you don't want to go through puberty and you can't get HRT, puberty is inevitable, so that's leading towards end game type of stuff.
To trans-affirming healthcare argument, I feel like people maybe like in the center who are not really well versed when it comes to like right-wing talking points are just getting swept up a lot, because a lot of these things that they are saying are from a fake point of like compassion. We don't hate trans people, we just want kids to make the right decisions. I love how this pretends to be shocked as if it's moldy, doesn't say deranged every 10 minutes. I mean, like,
okay, I will agree, there are dog whistles all over the place, left and the right. Personally, I'll just restate it. I do not care how you choose to go about your life, so long as it does not impede or harm others that have nothing to do with you or anything of that nature, right? If you want to transition, by all means transition. If you want to help others, if you want to do these things, go about it the correct way, all of this type of stuff, not trying to force feed it into children, then by all means, be an advocate, be a supporter, be an ally, be all of these different things. But the problem is that the left platforms these radicalized people who are trying to have drag shows in kids' schools and shit like that, and all of these different things. The pendulum swung so far to the left with the last administration that it's going to swing so far to the right with the next one. And it's always what happens. If you really truly want, in my personal opinion, if you really truly want your voice to be heard, or for the right direction to go with these types of issues, you need to, as a collective, you all need to stop platforming the crazy ones. You all need to stop platforming the radical ones, the ones that are just like, no, every child needs to get it. Make HRT in your bathtub like Keffels did. And look at the support that Keffels got. Was helping children hide HRT, bathroom HRT, freaking from their kids, and creating it themselves to inject themselves with God knows who fucking what. Okay. And also stole $100,000 from their trans supporters for their own gain and benefit. So if you truly want to make a difference, you need to start platforming people who can talk about actual reform and be open-minded enough to be able to interact with these types of ideals. There was a huge push in the last administration for this type of stuff. Absolutely. Is it good? Time will tell. But you also can't simply boil down all of it to, the right-wing talking points, because if that's what you're going to do, then that's what they're going to do. And they're just going to boil every argument you have down to the left wants kids to transition because they're groomers. You have to interact with it with some nuance. There's that word again.
He didn't let me finish to make the point that I was trying to make. Did Asmondgold watch you? Yeah, he watched 7 seconds of me. The point
Wait, hold on.
I was trying every 10 minutes. I mean, like, he didn't let me finish to make the point that I was trying to make. Did Asmondgold watch?
But see, as far as this video is shown, you do not know that. You haven't watched the complete segment on Asmondgold's live stream to know whether or not he continued to play the video and watch it. So far in this video, all we've seen is you react to a clip of him, the same way he reacted to a clip of you. You cannot, on one hand, try to condemn somebody for reacting to a clip while you are doing it yourself. You're not interacting with it in good faith.
You watched 7 seconds of me. The biggest political stream.
And it's not even on his own clip channel or on his own Twitch clips.
Asmondgold watched 7 seconds of a clip and portraying me to 60,000 people as a groomer. Kids can consent means that your parents have the right.
Oh yeah, so this is what I was talking about. Tectone right there saying, don't make me call my dad. Yeah, Tectone L, everybody in the comments in the last 2 videos who was like, Tectone, I can't believe you're pushing this narrative about Tectone's dad. Go fuck yourself, okay? This dude literally said, don't make me call my dad to a trans VTuber after they were calling him out for his dad's sexual assault and sexual harassment convictions. Stop. No, Tectone L.
To accept or refuse medical care for that child. There's like the Gillick competency. You can get vaccinated, for example, or you can get an abortion if you're a minor without the approval of a parent. Couldn't find the clip, but...
Okay, but there's a huge difference there. If you do not get vaccinated, you have the ability to die from diseases and infections that have practically been wiped out at this point in time. If you do not get an HRT, you don't die. Your body does not do anything that causes your death in an effort to fight off being a male or being a female. None of that. These two things are not equatable. You get vaccination so that way you don't get fucking polio or die from the goddamn chicken pox. These are or freaking the Black Plague. And to anybody who wants to say, oh, we haven't had any of those. Ebola was only like fucking what, 2014, 2016? It wasn't too long ago when there was a big ass Ebola breakout and we literally just had COVID. I mean, I didn't take the vaccines on that because that was way too rushed. So I'm not about to, anyways. But getting vaccinated and having vaccines in your system, or like a tetanus shot, right? A tetanus shot is to help you to not get fucking tetanus, because it's something that could possibly occur. I know for me in my job, it most certainly does. I had to get updated on my tetanus shot due to the fact that I smashed my finger in a car door while working, and it completely ripped the cuticle off of my finger. So it was metal on metal, and I was bleeding pretty profusely. I work with my hands daily. I get cuts daily. I get metal shavings all over me. I've drilled into my hands I don't know how many fucking times over the decade of being a technical person or of being a technician. These are things that we come into contact with daily and need protection from daily. The diseases and stuff of that nature, infections and stuff, not the whole kid situation. But if you do not receive HRT, that does not mean later down the line you're going to have some form of medical issue that would have been solved from HRT. They're not equatable. And that's like when you make these types of assertions, it's what sways people away because you're using fallible logic.
Competency. You can get vaccinated, for example, or you can get an abortion if you're a minor without the approval of a parent. Couldn't find the clip, but what?
Yes, you can get an abortion as a minor. Not in all states, okay? Not in all states, because you're not always in good hands. But the reason for that is because of the medical outcome. The body isn't mature enough to handle pregnancies when you're a minor. It causes more possibilities of death on the table. Well, not on the table, but death on the bed. It causes more medical issues later down the road. These are things that just aren't supposed to happen because your body isn't completely developed yet. And it doesn't possibly, I mean, we have grown women dying from giving birth all the time due to medical complications. And that factor only goes up significantly as a minor. I mean, are you really wanting to sit here and be like, oh, that 8-year-old, yeah, let them have a baby. If they die, they die. You can't be that way. You're saying, oh, well, minors can get abortions without a parent's consent. But why is that? Because of medical complications that can occur. And on top of that, too, you're excluding things such as rape. You're excluding things such as homeless children. You're excluding things that make it possible. That you're excluding things that make a reason for it. You're just stating this as an overarching argument, but there's holes in your argument here.
Let me VIP you for a second. Can you post the link again?
The thing on you, by the way? Oh, yeah, I know. I know. This is the person that has an issue with me, by the way. This person thinks that minors should be able to consent
to medical treatment.
That's who's going after me. It's like none of these people fact check their cards they're posting at all. It's insane. It's like, the two people going after me. One thinks that minors can consent
to medical treatment.
And the other one has multiple personality disorder, bipolar disorder.
Dude, you're schizophrenic and you don't want to get help.
Man, yeah, surely they're mentally sound. It's nuts. But anyways, I'm gonna move past all this. I can dunk on them all I want. I can tweet something out. But you know what? I'm good. You know what I mean?
If minors can't consent to HRT, then they can't consent to puberty. How do you not understand the take? Like, what the f is wrong with you? Like, seriously. I'm finished and puberty blockers aren't allowed here. Most cis adults I've talked to about it have parroted the talking points of they can't fully consent or understand, or I'm just an afraid parent and I don't want to allow something they could regret. The thing is, like, forcing children who are questioning their gender identity, etc., to, like, wait, it's just making the dysphoria worse. It's causing every aspect of that child's life to suffer. What if they regret their natural puberty? If they can't consent to HRT, if they can't decide which puberty they want to go through, how do you, like, justify forcing them through puberty? But I guess knowing the allegations, I guess it checks out that you want to force people to do something that they are not comfortable with. It's definitely
Okay, but at the same time, you're still not interacting with the fact that children are impressionable. They act out what they see. 99% of a toddler's life from birth to probably about, I don't know, 5 to 8 years old is just simply learning how to walk and use their hands based off of the impressions that they get from other people, based off of watching and learning. So it's these are those types of things. Why do you think it is that there's so many different like stereotypes, like of Asian people having to be doctors and medical professions and stuff of that nature because of the pressure put upon them by the families, by the, you know, it's a bad stereotype. Obviously, it's a funny one at times, but it's not incorrect. There's a multitude, or even if you come from like a military family like Tectone does, right? If you come from a military family or a police family, a firefighter family, a family of doctors, there is that added pressure on you to live up to these standards, right? Is it fair? No. Is it forced? Kind of can be. You can always turn around and say, oh, well, you have the ability to choose, but there is that level of not wanting to disappoint the people around you, right? So if you have incredibly progressive parents who push the idea that kids have the ability to consent, that kids should be trans, that kids all this, that, and the third, then growing up in that environment, you would be leaning more towards what you have been indoctrinated into. And let's just be realistic. It is an indoctrination, the same way with religion or anything else. Okay. It's something that you have been taught and you have not been shown the opposite side of it to be able to make a well thought out, well-informed decision, right? Now, let's say that the parents have nothing to do with this and the kid is the one doing all the information gathering, figuring these things out, going to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, whichever one, and talking these things out, going to medical professionals and all of this stuff. I'm not one of those people who believe that a kid is like, oh yeah, I want to transition and then tomorrow there's surgery. Obviously that should not happen. But do I agree that a child should have the ability to look into this type of stuff and make well-informed decisions? Sure, absolutely. But I do believe that it shouldn't be in the wake of woke, in my personal opinion. It shouldn't be the fact that, oh, I saw this on TikTok and this person blew up and all that type of stuff. And I don't know the pipeline of transitioning, but obviously if somebody wants to bring forth the fact that they feel like they should transition, they want to transition, that should be looked into, they should be talked to about it, and it should come to a place where all medical professionals involved have a belief of the child's complete understanding and ability to articulate what it is that they want, why it is they feel that way, and move forward from there. And you have to also address the fact that a lot of it is trend. Not a lot, let me rephrase. That it can potentially be coming from trendy type of stuff. It was trendy to be suicidal back in the 2000s with all the emo music coming out. Then it was trendy for the whole red pill arc in the world and black pilled and all this type of stuff. It was trendy to be edgy on YouTube for so long until TOS cracked down on it. You have to be able to interact with these different arguments against what you're saying and also be somebody who is against these types of things as well. You can't simply write off every single person who says something. Maybe they're uneducated, yes, but you can't write off every single talking point as some right-wing talking point. You have to be willing to accept the fact that there is going to be bad apples in your camp who are, pedophiles. Like, you just have to. I'm sorry. It's the same thing with the right. The right, you have people on the right who is like, no, leave the kids alone, leave the kids alone. And then there's some massive thing about them coming out and being, freaking Diddy 2.0. Like, it is what it is. You have to interact with all of these different things. And at this point in time, she hasn't, sorry, I'm butchering your name here, but you haven't offered any viewpoint like that. You haven't interacted with it, in my personal opinion, in a good faith way because of the emotion behind all of this.
Representation to discredit you.
And by that, I know I'm pausing a lot and talking a lot, but what I mean by that is I haven't yet heard her say, I understand these concerns because there are people who do these things. There are people like this. There are people like Keffels and such, and they are a reason for this misinformation. They are a reason for this stereotype. What I'm saying is this, and this is why it's different. You're just continuing to reiterate your talking point, but not really flushing it out and not interacting with the arguments against it. Obviously, you're picking arguments that are just being shot out there. I mean, Tectone, let's be realistic. The dude's not gonna, yeah. Anyways, I personally would love to talk to this person. It doesn't necessarily have to be a debate. I'm not so incredibly well versed in the whole trans community and stuff of that nature, but I do believe that having a willingness to interact with the opposite side, or at least even those who are just critical of it in general, could help to further the agenda in which you're trying to accomplish. If you're truly 100% about wanting to get kids the care that they need, you must also interact with the fact and accept the fact that there are going to be people on your side, just as my own, who have a alternate agenda for what they're saying.
Without engaging.
Alternative agenda, sorry.
With your argument, yeah, absolutely dishonest. Some people won't pay for that, for their kid. Healthcare costs a lot in the US. I mean, that's like a general problem. How many children are actually on puberty?
Fewer than 1% of the U.S. adolescents receive gender-affirming medications, report finds. This is the health journal. This looks like it's a health journal from January 6, 2025. As U.S. lawmakers debate issues around health care for transgender youth, it's been difficult to determine the number of young people receiving gender-affirming medications, leaving room for exaggerated and false claims. Now a medical journal has published the most reliable estimate yet, and the numbers are low, reflecting more clearly on medical practices now being weighed by the U.S. Supreme Court.
in the US. I mean, that's like a general problem. How many children are actually on puberty blockers in the US? 0.1%. Like how Nayar actually acknowledges people taking her out of context and provides context. That is just like the thing, but they don't want to hear it out because me acknowledging that a kid can be trans is making me a groomer by default because that's the lie that they are pushing. Like,
okay, I disagree. 100% disagree with that. I do believe just as there was cross-dressing, just as there was all of these different things, hell, even in this freaking day and age, people don't believe that depression is real. Look, trans people are real. Trans people do exist. If you disagree with that, then it is what it is. I'm not some woke-minded lefty, but at the end of the day, even if at 0.1% of 8 billion people in the, well, we're going off of the US, all right, but even just 0.1% is still hundreds of thousands of people within the US. Is it hundreds or tens of thousands? There's a lot of people, okay, a lot of kids. So for the amount of people who have transitioned and are living lives, I just think that there is not enough there's not enough data at this point in time to say that it is a overall good. And the reason why I say that is because this is so relatively new. This is only within the last maybe 5 to 10 years. Medical professions are still trying to figure out the working around all of this stuff, and different things like the DSM-5 and stuff of this nature being continuously updated with new medical breakthroughs and stuff like that. I personally, I'm not going to say everybody who is for children transitioning that want to transition and have to transition are groomers. That would be asinine to say. The same as it would be to say that everybody who's against it is a hero or anything of that nature. What I am saying, and what I've always been saying throughout this entire video, is that so long as all medical professionals who are involved have done their due diligence, and it is not something that is being forced upon this child, not something that is being influenced in any other way outside of their own personal feelings, their own personal desire, and their own person, then I don't see an issue with it. But I do see an issue with the age, because all we're saying here is kids. We're not saying there's no solid age limit in which they're saying it should occur. Obviously, puberty starts happening as young as 13 and as old as 18, which is the most formidable years they are the most developmental ages for children. And they typically will shape how they go into young adulthood. This is just one of those situations where, again, so much nuance into it. No one person's going to have the answer, but it is a discussion that I think a lot of people can get into and talk about. Now, you're going to have the extremists on both sides.
they don't understand the topic. They're not open-minded enough. They're not willing to listen. They don't want to hear the argument. Trans adults exist, and that means trans children exist. I mean, I was one, but these people say that I've been abused. I was a victim of abuse, and that is why I'm trans. I am not. A lot of trans people are victims of abuse, because being trans, I don't know, it breaks the minds of some people where they're like, oh, I need to just like abuse you and correct you. That is.
And I have to agree with this, because if you believe gays are real and lesbians are real, then you must also believe that trans people are real as well. You can't on one hand turn around and say, yeah, gays have a right to exist. Gay people, you can't choose what you're into, what you're attracted to when it comes to your adult partner, right? Then on the other hand, you can't then turn around and say, trans kids, they don't exist. Like, there's just, you know, it's the same as autism or ADHD or ADD. The problem, though, even with that, is there's a reason why medical professionals, you know, they hold off on giving such diagnosis without complete, clear-cut, and concise evidence of this child having some sort of medical issue. And I mean, I hate to say issue, but like ADHD, ADD, autism, those things are lifelong issues. So yeah, I'll back them on that. But as far as all this other stuff, it's a little difficult to want to interact with it and not just hear something incredibly in my personal opinion, disingenuous and not want to just immediately write it off and go into a tangent.
It's what they are doing with like lesbians, asexual people, you know? It's just like, if you're different than the cishet normative, it just makes
Yeah, I don't know about asexual people. Pussy good. Just joking.
it more likely that you're going to be a victim. But that doesn't mean that you are gay. It doesn't mean that you're a lesbian. It doesn't mean that you are trans just because you've been abused. Same with like asexual, etc. Being abused doesn't turn people trans. Yeah, that's why you can't abuse a trans kid to make them cis. You can them, which is like what they're saying with like, oh, just do therapy, yeah? Send them into conversion camps where they're being tortured and abused until they're either ending their lives or they're like so depressed and anxious that they've just been like bullied into pretending to be what the cishet normative, what the conservatives want them to be. Where it's like a mechanism to like shield yourself. By the way, if you didn't know, this is a petition on banning conversion therapy in the EU. To be successful, a European citizens initiative has to reach 1 million statements of support as well as a minimum threshold in at least 7 countries. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I hope something is going to like come from that, because conversion therapy is abuse. It is child talk, and it needs.
I agree. Conversion therapy needs to be 100% illegal nationwide, countrywide, worldwide. I 100% agree with that.
To be banned. I didn't expect it to actually hit the threshold though. It got really close to the deadline. Conversion therapy is still a thing in America and government funded in some places. Yeah, it's like some Christian stuff. That's how they get away with it.
Okay, whoa, you can't just throw it all on Christian. I mean, there's Christianity, Judaism, Muslim, pretty much any and all religion have some form of conversion therapy. It's not just Christians. And I'm not saying that as a Christian, because I'm definitely not, but I'm just saying you can't put it all on the backs of a single entity. Otherwise, you're not being, you know, fair in my personal opinion. But I feel like this is more just a throwaway comment.
Places. It's like a religious thing, and then apparently.
Okay, see, there you go. It's a religious thing. Yes.
It's okay to talk children, but oh, I am so evil for saying that, hey, you know, if a child cannot consent to HRT, then they can't consent to puberty. It's so cruel. Yeah.
Well, I don't think that you're evil for it. I just simply think that you're not engaging with the entirety of that, because you have to consent to get HRT. You have to go through a whole medical institution, red tape, and interviews, all of this type of stuff. But with puberty, it just happens naturally. I'm not saying that, oh, well, you have to consent to it. Yes, obviously it is forced upon you by your own body, but HRT is something that is forced upon, well, not necessarily forced upon you, but HRT is something that you would have to actively search for, get medically cleared for, get it. It's just, they're different. And then what's the solution? So you're saying that, oh, you can't consent to puberty, so eventually you're going to hit it. You reside in a state or a country that that doesn't allow for HRT or conversion or transitioning. So you're limiting a person's ability to do something. If they feel so strongly about transitioning and they do feel like they're being forced to go through puberty, you're dwindling down their abilities to choose on what's going to happen next. At least it's kind of how that's the way I'm looking at it. At least I don't know. I feel like that's not the steadiest of argument, and I wish that she would flush it out more.
I'm sorry. Please don't cancel me. I'm just kind of fascinated that we're at a point where all these big streamers who literally weaponize talking points, political talking points, turning it into drama by making it very reactionary, very emotionally charged, not engaging in good faith and portraying and invalidating anyone's character instead of actually interacting with the points, with the talking points. Like,
Okay, but you yourself are also not engaging in good faith in the fact that, again, you got on Asmondgold for reacting to a clip of you, so therefore you reacted to a clip of him. At least in this video alone.
These types of people are coming after me. Back then, when Rev came after me while I was still in the hospital, I was freaking out. Then he came after me for the second time.
Says Rev Saydu, the VTuber has repeatedly shared their desire to groom children. They even think children can consent to life-altering decisions. So where's the backlash from VTubers? Sadly, these activists are so afraid of not being politically correct, they will support groomers like this. Okay, a lot of people are audience locked. We here are not. I mean, we've gone up and down in subscribers, hate comments, love comments, all this, that, and the third. So you can guarantee that you're always going to get our personal take on this channel, not some fucking politically charged or audience locked fucking opinion. Nayar responds with, so when are you watching the video instead of harassing me over thumbnails? Okay, but you yourself even stated that you made that thumbnail in an effort to cause, a problem. Now, you literally said that. Like, you did it in an effort to go ahead and cause, I don't want to say drama, but basically poke the bear at people, and then later realized that it was bad, that it wasn't good. And that's why you changed it, because you do understand that the way that a first impression, that a way a person looks at something might stop them from even interacting with what you're saying and simply go into how they feel. That's just, again, the word of the day, nuance. You have to be able to, if you can't take the heat on you put up a controversial thumbnail, you got flack for it. You're going to get flack for it, and you deserve flack for it. The way you interact with what's said is what is going to really determine an outcome of an issue. You should turn around and simply be like, in my personal opinion, I made a controversial thumbnail, realized my mistake, and changed it because I want to be a voice for good. That's my opinion.
And I started engaging with it instead of hiding. I don't know what it is about me, but I seem to piss these people off a lot. They can't handle you being right. Yeah. They're not used to getting talked back to, especially not by a woman, right? Damn, this
Don't do it.
small VTuber, small little foxo, trans VTuber. It should be so easy to bully me into silence, right? I don't know. I guess I haven't learned my place yet. Maybe you do need to call your dad. Maybe you need to make that phone call to get tips by dehumanizing me, by demonizing me with like weaponizing the fact that I acknowledge the existence of trans kids because I was one. They justify to themselves and to their community to like go after me. If normies read the talking points that I have, then
okay, but you also have to acknowledge that your community is going to go after them as well. So it is a back and forth.
they're going to like understand. They're going to like see.
Now, I'm not excusing anyone taking you out of context and calling you a groomer or anything of that nature without any actual evidence, but all creators have to understand that at some point in time, their audience is going to be weaponized with or without them wanting them to be.
How I'm being portrayed is incorrect. That's why me actually making this thumbnail with like, we will never leave kids alone because we care about like supporting trans kids and want them to have like access to healthcare and education, etc. We don't want them.
But that's not what your thumbnail said. Your thumbnail said, leave the kids alone, and then you under it saying no. It didn't say, no, we want them to have access to education and medical treatment. It just simply said no. So you can't be like, oh, well, you didn't know what I said. You didn't, I mean, people should interact with your points made in the video. Absolutely. Like, I agree with it. But at the same time, you can't sit here and just be like, well, they should have known what I meant.
Them to lose housing, for example, just because they come out as trans. They're weaponizing that. They're twisting it into something evil. But when people...
I don't think you can kick your child out for being trans in America. Wait, hold on.
About like supporting trans kids and want them to have like access to healthcare and education, etc. We don't want them to lose housing, for example, just because they come out as trans.
Don't want them to lose housing just because they come out of I don't think you legally I mean, you can't legally even kick kids out for coming out as gay or bi or lesbian in America. I mean, I don't know all the laws of all the states, but maybe in Germany you can, but not in the United States. I don't think there's a law that allows parents to legally kick their kid out for their sexual orientation.
Weaponizing that, they're twisting it into something evil. But when people actually look into that, they're going to like see how disingenuous their rhetoric is. Understand people's hesitancy around trans kids because of their ignorance. But when you dispel that ignorance and they double down, then I no longer understand. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like if you're unwell versed in the topic, a lot of right-wing talking points are going to sound reasonable to you. But like if
Okay, hold on.
you sit down with someone and you have an open mind and you engage in good faith, then all these misconceptions that you have that are shaping your perception of what it means to be trans or like healthcare, etc., is going to be, resolved. It's usually.
But the same could be said for your stance. If you yourself are open-minded and listen to the opposition, then you can also see where that person's coming from and potentially have a better understanding of why simply pushing this type of a narrative or simply pushing HRT or anything like that onto children, or at least the way it's coming across, may not be the best way to do it. I'm not saying that this person is forcing kids to transition, trying to force, like doing some Catboy rant shit like Keffel's. Not saying that at all. What I am saying, however, is that the way that you're going about this, at least in this video, is to simply be like, well, they're not interacting with my arguments, but yet they haven't actually expounded upon what they're truly meaning by, hey, you can't consent to puberty. They're not listing the fact that puberty is a biological thing that all mammals go through. They're not stating the fact that if you are in a place, if you are in a place that doesn't allow for transitioning and you don't want to go through puberty, you're limiting yourself to the end game results. They're not talking about how the medical reasons as to why minors have the ability to get an abortion, or the nuance that comes along with minors, ability to consent to certain drugs being given to them, or even the fact that you tried equating HRT to vaccinations, which is insane. Like these talking points are more harmful than good, in my personal opinion, because they're coming from a place of feeling rather than, in my opinion, a place of logic. You have to actually look and expand upon what you're saying, which is why I'm talking so much on this. You can't equate HRT to the Ebola vaccination. They're not the same. You're not going to get, random non-transition cancer if you don't take HRT, but if you don't take the Ebola vaccination, there is a chance that you could catch Ebola and die later in life. So, like I said, I would absolutely talk to this person about this. It doesn't have to be a debate, but just open, come to the table conversation.
Confirmation bias. People naturally just look for things that confirm what they think rather than any proof opposing it. Yeah, that's what I mean with having an open mind. You're triggering them because you're disproving their arguments, so you pose a danger to them. What they're attacking me with is baseless, but because they have the bigger platform, they can shape the narrative and they can weaponize their audience that they have, who are just going to take everything that he is saying at face value. Same with Asmondgold.
But the same with you as well. See, I hate when they make these arguments. Well, they're a big streamer, so obviously their following is going to just eat up anything they say. But the same is said about you. You are a streamer, a content creator, and obviously the people who follow you are going to be like-minded. Then they're going to just go with what you're saying as well, even if you're wrong. That's just, it's the way it works. Hassan's ruthless, bloodthirsty fucking community chomps at the bits of his next stream. Yes, totally agree, 100%. But at the same time, you have to acknowledge that that's the same for you. Your audience is very locked on a singular subject. So therefore, anytime you, their go-to content creator, their savior of the trans kids, when you put out a narrative or you put out a content or you do something in furtherance of the complete goal that your audience has or the desire that your audience has, they're going to back you. And if you get into this with a smaller, you get into some sort of drama or an argument with a smaller creator than yourself, you will then be the bigger content creator whose audience is rampant and just willing to believe anything you say. Like, I just don't understand. Like, you every argument, if you're going to make an argument against somebody, it shouldn't be so easily usable against you.
Its incel fan base is not going to question things and be like, hey.
And see, now you're going into the incel fan base. Like, come on. See, this is what I'm saying. If you're going to call them an incel fan base, then they have the ability to call you and your fan base groomers.
Actually, maybe you should have like let the clip play, because the tweet actually says what the clip is about. I don't know what's going to like.
But you also could have interacted with it more by reacting to the segment in which he saw your videos, which you have yet to do.
Come from this. All the people at the lowest level who have initially come after me are now like trying to capitalize on the fact that, oh, they've been calling me out for such a long time. They've been calling us groomers. This isn't new. It still sucks to hear. Yeah, it's recycled rhetoric. Every talking point is like the same, but they still like insist on pushing that. Do you have future plans on what direction your content creation is gonna take? I'm not sure. I do still want to have like my normal typical content, but I've been also like struggling with like how I engage with like trans topics that aren't dependent on me debunking transphobic talking points. I want to collab with more trans creators, especially trans people who aren't necessarily trans women, just to get like a different perspective. When it comes to like non-binary people, for example, I've been mostly commenting about like the situation with like trans rights in the US, for example, or the UK. There's always going to be some political stuff to talk about, but it kind of gets really tedious after a while, and I need to broaden my niche, I guess.
I would agree with that. I mean, you don't want to content lock yourself as well as audience lock yourself. Okay, well, time for the final thoughts portion of all of this. Again, like I've said throughout this entire video, so long as there's medical professionals involved, all the right steps are being gone through, and it is determined that the person in question understands and can fully articulate what it is that they're in need of, I don't see an issue with I don't see an issue with transitioning. You know that here on the channel, we have a very love-hate relationship with the Rainbow Mafia. We are live and let be, so long as your life does not impede or impose upon any human being out there. Do what you do, love who you love, so long as you're not hurting anybody. On the other hand, I will say that the number one thing that any community can do is to weed out the radicalized ones, stop making them your head spokesman, stop trying to force a narrative, and more, or not necessarily force a narrative. Stop being so righteous in stop being so righteous in how you feel, and be more open to a conversation. And that's for both sides of the aisle. That's for both sides of any conflict. The only way to truly be able to move forward and figure out what's best for the majority is to be able to come to understandings. Some people won't. I think that a lot of things need to be left out, such as religion. Throw that the fuck out. At least in this conversation, because religion has nothing to do with biology. Throw out your feelings as well, because just because you feel like something should be one way doesn't necessarily mean that it should be, especially when we're talking science. And be open to criticism and understanding where it is that you could be wrong. Sometimes people feel so forthright about something that they're unwilling to listen to anything that even like somewhat sounds like a negativity, or something that maybe they feel denounces what they talking about. Honestly, I feel like this was more so a rant video, and I don't mean to qualify it as that, but it seems more so like this person has been dealing with all of this, so they just were kind of getting their feelings and their thoughts out there. They did make another video. It's about 45 minutes long. Maybe I'll react to it. Maybe I'll react to it on stream. But I'll have to say this. Trans people are real. Gays are real. Lesbians are real. Medical issues are real. Dysphoria, all of that stuff. You have to accept the fact that in this day and age, things are real. But if I'm willing to accept that, you on that side of the aisle, you on that side of the conflict, must also accept the fact that there are people with ill intention that your side platforms and does not want to. They don't want what's best. They just want to be right, or they want the power and the control the same way as Keffals did. That's about it, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you agree, disagree, how you feel. It is what it is. If we have people who disagree with me, by all means, throw it in the comments. And if you want to unsubscribe because I said trans people are real, I mean, fuck it, go for it. I don't give a shit. Anyways, guys, it's been Kmplxity. Thanks for watching. This is The Lasting Opinion, and we'll catch you in the next one.